Now I'm going to paint these front and back parts of the grip with acrylic black paint from Vallejo. I got rub and buff on the edges here. And I'm also going to paint the entire section so that they're of the consistent shade, because once you clear coat, if it isn't the same shade of black all around, you'll notice a difference. Sorry if my head is in the way. I really need to see up close when I do this. And the last piece before I start doing clear coats and buffing, I'm going to pull out the piston and use Rub and Buff silver leaf to get that done. And that will be also the last piece to buff and clear coat. So I need to leave that charged for a while until the silver dries, and then I'll put it back in until it's time to clear coat it. So I neglected to properly film the buffing stage. I thought I had the camera recording, but apparently I didn't. So here I'm just going to demonstrate the pressure needed for buffing of Rub and Buff, and use a soft cotton cloth like this, which is just a pillowcase, and you don't use any more than a light amount of pressure on each section. Certain colors of Rub and Buff require more buffing than others. Some colors of Rub and Buff, if you buff it at all, it could just buff it right off of the surface. So silver leaf Rub and Buff, you don't really need too much buffing, if at all, because the way it goes on, it almost buffs itself as you're applying it. Antique gold Rub and Buff is similar, but it might need a little bit of buffing. European gold, which is the darker gold I used on this project, actually does require buffing because it's kind of a rough surface before you buff it, and you can see it get significantly shinier as you buff it. And I'm sorry I don't have an actual video of the buffing process, but I think you'll get the idea. So here I'll show you the kind of clear coat that I use. It's a brush-on clear coat. This brand no longer exists, but you can find similar clear coats at Hobby Lobby or Michael's or AC Moore, places like that. It's a brush-on acrylic clear coat that is applied with a brush, and I use a wide, soft brush. This one's called a flat wash brush. And you just brush it on, and it goes on milky and clear. I should say milky and dries clear. And you have to use a brush clear coat with Rub and Buff because the propellants used in spray clear coats melts the wax base of rub and buff, and it ruins your finish. It stays, or doesn't stay shiny anymore, and it kind of muddies the parts like this that aren't quite as shiny. I've done my acrylic paint and rub and buff touch-ups, and now I'm ready to start clear coating. And I usually only put about that much on the brush, and like I showed on the silver parts, sometimes you have to brush back over a little bit after you initially apply it, otherwise it pools like on a waxed car. And I usually put a slightly heavier coat on the pistol grip, just because it's the part that's going to be seeing the most amount of wear. Looks like I'm going to have to do a touch-up on the edge of the pistol grip here, where I must have missed some of the black on the first pass. So what I'll do then is I'll wait for this clear coat to completely dry, then I'll use the acrylic black to touch up this little section on the front of the grip, and then I'll put just another little bit of coat of clear coat on top of that.